That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing. It's a science place. It's a scientific fact that we're all up in your face. It is time once again for the one, the only Protonic Reversal. Welcome to it. Tonight's special episode. Returning guest, Gem from Dead, all the way coming all the way live from Australia. Gonna see what that awesome fella's been up to. It's been a long pandemic. They keep very busy. Their work ethic is astounding, as well as the output. So you can say someone's work ethic is great, and that means that maybe you don't like what actually comes out of it. I think people do that as a way to get out of saying things sometimes, but I actually quite like everything they do. So before we get to that, I'm going to do this thing that still is quite unnatural to me, but I will continue to do so because people tell me that I should. So welcome to Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. I am your host, Conan Neutron. I am a rock and roll lifer who has toured and recorded for over 22 years, most known for the band Conan Neutron, The Secret Friends. Music is a huge part of my life, and I use the format of this very long-running podcast to talk about music with musicians whose work I enjoy and respect. Folks that may or may not be household names, but do something very special. This is episode 297. Good Lord, I'm feeling all 297 of them right now. Let me tell you, if this is your first time listening to the show, all of the archives are at protonicreversal.com and are always free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding. And if you'd like to support the show and get episodes sooner, you can give $1 a month to patreon.com/protonicreversal. Also, if you like the show or even just a single episode, please feel free to share it along, like, subscribe, or post a review. All of that helps people find the show, and it's just a darn nice thing to do. So there you go. That's the spiel. I'm happy to do it. Well, happy may be wrong, but I definitely did it. So I got that going for me. And without further ado, well, maybe a little ado, but without further ado, let's bring on Gem. Gem, how you doing, man? Hold on, let me unmute you, and then you can tell me. There you go. It's a much more high-tech setup than it was last time in this outfit.
It is. It's really exciting to be part of this whole. Because I've been listening the whole time, but I always just listen. I actually haven't watched, or maybe I've watched one or two. But this is really cool. Yeah.
The one thing that I dislike about the video is that there's times it looks like I'm not paying attention, or I'm like wandering off. Oh, I'm checking my email or something. I'm actually doing like important things, but that's where the crack show of like producing your own show and also hosting it and this and that and the other. And I think you get a more leeway from folks if it's audio only that way. But people like the video, and it's nice to see you. It's nice to see. We don't get to see our friends anymore, right? So it's nice to see you.
I have to say I was thinking exactly that when you said, "Oh, are we doing audio only or are we doing video?" Part of me thought, you know what? It would be really nice to see you.
Like, it's good to see anybody anymore, right?
Yeah.
Love the fact that you guys, in your own way, have kept very busy and productive. There has been less touring now, I think, for during this pandemic, since the entire time you guys have basically been a band at this point, right? I mean, you're pretty much always at least planning something.
Yeah, we were always on tour from the very beginning until the day of the pandemic.
Right.
And we haven't toured since. We've done a few shows here and there, but it's, as anyone listening that's been a touring musician would know, they're really, really different things. When your tour fit is very, very different to doing the odd show, sneaking them in while you can. And it's probably more unpredictable now than it's been at any point in time.
With no signs of that really changing, I think, at this point.
No, just people that are generally over it, so they keep behaving as if it's changing, but it's not yet. So we shall see.
Power of positive thinking, but it's really not positive thinking. It's just I don't want this to be here anymore, so I'm just going to not acknowledge it. Which is really? That's really if this was in a movie script, I wouldn't actually believe it. Yet here we are.
Yeah, and I find it really hard to do I find it hard to sell myself anyway, but I find it really hard to sell shows when there's this, increasingly growing or herd of elephants in the room, which is like, hang on, this might not happen. And
come on out. It may or may not happen. Exactly.
Yeah. And your ticket might still be kind of a bit useless because you might get sick that day, or, you know, like, so it's just this, I've found that part of it frustrating, because in a way what I'd prefer is more to just announce shows like the day before and just go, right, this is what's happening, you know. If you're here, you're here.
Flash mobs or something. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
Not familiar. But yeah, I sort of think of it almost a bit like,
it wouldn't surprise me if that was a uniquely American thing, because it's obnoxious and definitely born of the children of privilege. So
it's got to be that it came from you. But yeah,
Sure.
unfortunately, I've been sort of on the perimeter of a couple, and I'd say they're up there as some of the most awkward things.
Well, because it's like, you get people, oh, hey, let's ride the subway in our underwear. Okay, great. You know, that's awesome. Yeah. Like, good for you guys. Like, I mean, is that, if that's what you're busy with? All right, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, if that's what does it for you, cool. I mean, I guess the idea of like doing something kind of like interesting and different, like from everyday life, that I can get behind. But I don't know why this turned into me pivoting about flash mobs. But yeah,
I think it's the combination of like planned spontaneity that makes it a bit awkward.
Yeah. Let's be spontaneous. 8 p.m. tomorrow. Let's all be spontaneous. Yeah, exactly. And there's something just kind of just, I don't know. It seems like that was maybe more tolerable when there was less outright fascism, like, you know, jumping around when the fascism was a little more overt. Now it's just like, come on, man, really? Like, this is what you're up to? This is what you're up to. Okay. But anyway, but planned spontaneity, you know, just like shows. You want people to show up, but yeah, how do you motivate people to come out when it's like, hey, maybe a thing, may not be a thing, but
yeah, and you're also promoting something that, you know, for some people is really, like, you know, I've got friends that are immunocompromised, and
that's very
it's a weird time because, you know, all of us underground bands are familiar with the reality of what we do being offensive to people. But now it's like, oh shit, even playing, just the fact that I'm playing a show is upsetting to some people. And that's actually, and I understand why. Like, so yeah, you're conflicted even in yourself when you're playing a show, going, oh, is this going to be a spreader? But it's also going to be a spreader of love. So, you know.
Right, exactly. Yeah. COVID and love. But I think that there's, so here's, of course, in my raccoon-like persnicketyness, here's what I've turned it around to. That would you apply that same level of moral culpability towards sporting events, right? Or other like larger, because I mean, again, you guys at least seem to have a modicum of shifting drunk dad logic, but some amount of logic with it. Whereas here, people just are, whatever we're doing. Is it make money? Good. We need to make money now. Now that's what we're doing. And like, there's no culpability. There's no answer. There's people just acting like it never happened, which requires a certain degree of mental disconnection that I didn't think was possible, frankly. But here we are.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to talk about it for too long because I just know everyone's sick of it. But I can tell you what has happened here that's pretty weird. Talk about it for too long. As you probably, or you might know, like Melbourne, which is the city closest to us, had the longest lockdown in the world.
Yeah.
We were we're a lot luckier because we're in the country. But essentially, that lockdown also meant that we couldn't go to Melbourne at all. They called it the Ring of Steel. So country people weren't allowed in and city people weren't allowed out. So we probably had the most severe, the most extreme approach, in a good way, but as far as trying to limit the spread and all of that. And then we just kind of did a 180 and let it rip.
Yeah.
And
And like,
it's
if you had a yacht, then like you're good. Like people that have yachts, you're okay. Everyone else,
yeah.
no.
So it's a very strange time because I honestly I my sort of social anxieties that I always sort of thought were kind of manageable now are like crazy. Like I'll just be halfway through someone's show and I'm like, yeah, I've got to get out of here. I can't. And I think it's from we had, I think it was 200 days or something in a row where you couldn't do that. So it's weird to suddenly do it, and this strange mixture of, I don't know. But look, the positive side of it was we came up with a bunch of things that we really enjoy doing. Like, we did, and we're still doing them, like noise shows where we're completely covered and everyone can be spaced out, and we can do them outdoors. We've done most of them outdoors, and so that's been really fun. It's just been a bit sad that there hasn't been much of that. Yeah. It's mainly been just what you were saying. It's mainly been people going, all right, we'll put pause on, and then we'll just go back to the way things were, and then we'll pause it, and then we'll go back.
Right.
Very little adaptation. Yeah.
Well, and but it shouldn't discount the ingenuity of bands such as yourselves are finding ways through it and finding ways to maintain creativity and maintain viability as artists and musicians, just to keep going day after day to move forward, because it's I think it's stigmatized and people don't want to talk about that because for whatever reason, after all these decades of music, especially independent music, people still have this idea it's like almost famous or something, and that if you admit any kind of fault or doubt that you're somehow unworthy, or like everyone is quote unquote faking it till they make it. But then like a band such as yourselves that clearly you do it because you love it, and you do it because you have something to say, and you have a way of going about it that it's for the people that it's for. And I mean, I think that's enviable, and I think that's unfortunately it's bands such as yourselves that have probably had it the worst. Right? If you were just a hobbyist where you're like, it's like macrame. I can put it up, turn it down. Like, I just won't do any macrame today. Fine. But if you have to do it, then you're boned to a certain degree. I mean, like, not exactly, but I mean, it's been interesting seeing people deal with that. And I think you guys are actually a good template for, rather than dwelling in the nasty now, finding things that challenge you and that make you, try different things and push yourself forward. I mean, at least that's from the outside perspective anyway. I don't know. Maybe none of that's true.
No, we're both pretty, I think the way our brains work, we're both not really into fantasy, neither of us are particularly sort of religious or anything like that. We tend to try to be brave and accept the realities that are, and deal with them. And so that sort of meant, having to separate what we would like to do
right.
From what we could actually do. So I mean, that the album that we will release soon, it's partly written, or very much written actually. It was written because we thought, we'll need something that we can perform with everyone, including us, in masks, which we thought would become normal. But it actually that never happened. What happened was no shows, and then shows with no safety protocol, and then shows, and then no shows again. And so we were kind of like, fuck, once again, we've misjudged. We thought we were kind of being clever, writing music that we can do without shouting, but it hasn't really worked out that way anyway. So
that's what's so crazy to me too, is that it was like that, where I saw a few people. There's definitely, I think there was definitely a time that if you felt comfortable playing your acoustic guitar at the camera and singing, it was your world.
Yeah.
And if you weren't, it was not your world, and maybe is something that tacitly you expected that it should become your world. But I think that I saw a few sort of masked live streams, I guess, and that was over completely. And I don't really understand why, other than the fact that people just got tired of COVID.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's all it was. It's crazy. And yeah, we didn't really do the streaming thing, and I got to be honest, I didn't really watch many of them.
I got to be honest,
it's just,
I didn't either.
Yeah, there seems to be a small window of certain music that it can really work for it.
Right.
But it's not rock and roll, that's for sure. And even some of the, I remember sort of watching, I never got to see the Jesus Lizard live, but I remember watching their DVD and going, wow, this is amazingly boring for a band that are incredible. This should feel better, but it sort of doesn't, because I'm not there. That's what rock and roll is. It's about, you need to actually be shook, and so I'm just not I'll watch footage of bands I love for sort of nerdy reasons, how is he playing that bit?
Yeah, what's that feel like? What is that? What does that look like when they play it live?
Yeah,
what changes?
But it's never comparable. And the only exception to that being if you get to go see a Hendrix concert at the cinema,
Right. It's like a full tactile experience. Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, and maybe smoke a joint or something first, just to really, let yourself just pretend, But as far as watching people, play a show on my laptop or a phone, look, we didn't do it just because we thought, let's just focus on doing the stuff we love rather than broadcasting it. And everyone sort of had their role. So I sort of think of you a bit like, and this is a compliment, by the way, this is a huge compliment. One of my favorite characters from The Simpsons is Krusty, right?
Right.
And it's because, the episode where Sideshow Bob makes them abolish television?
Oh, yeah.
And Krusty's like, nah, I'm not having that. He goes out to the desert, finds this little generator. He's like, damn it, I'm still going to do what I do. And that's, this sort of podcast has been everything is falling apart, but, I'm going to keep doing this. And it's, I think a lot of us, I feel like it's connected a whole lot of different people, so we've all got our role, and I'm grateful that people like yourself have stayed in communication. I'm stoked that people have done streams if they needed to. We just sort of focused more on, what music can we write and how can we use music as a way of dealing with all the shit that has happened, and we haven't been able to, we haven't been able to go to funerals. We haven't been able to see people when they're struggling, all that stuff. So it's been a bit of honestly, I think, up until the pandemic, we've generally been a bit more deliberately immature with our music, not in a bad way, but just that's our humor,
Yeah.
We're perpetually 14-year-old boys. And then in the last couple of years, it's sort of been like, all right, shit, we may need to call upon these skills in order to process some grief, this just, and we've been able to do that. So that's great,
Yeah, and that's very real. And, that's something that everybody's sort of dealing with. And I think that it's almost an act of bravery just to survive it at all, right? Let alone be creative during it. And I think that some people are very hard on themselves if they feel like they're not keeping up with their favorite artist or, their friends or whatever. And I mean, it's a minor miracle any of us are able to get through it all, frankly.
Yeah.
Is how definitely. I look at it. And that's not something to take lightly. I mean, I don't, I'm over here just, whatever. And so the fact that someone's getting something out of it is fantastic. And the fact that it's been an anchor for people is for what folks that have been is lovely. But I mean, it was literally just that or stare at the walls and, you know, wait till I die, like the Big Black song, you know, like it's like I didn't have anything else going on, man. So that's just a case in accidentally being providing a service in the zeitgeist. And I think there's other examples of that as well. And people kind of finding hidden strength and things along those lines well, what does it mean to you? And something that I think has been a running theme with this show has sort of been like, well, yeah, all the walls are taken down to like do all these things easier, but it's almost like it should hurt a little bit if it really means something to you. And I feel like it doesn't, or it didn't for a long time. And now it's like, oh, now it does. Now it hurts quite a bit. And like, you really have to ask yourself how much you want it. How much do you want it? How much does this mean to you? How much is sharing this mean to you? And, you know, I've known people that have stopped. I've known people that have never been more creative as well. And I know a lot of people right in the middle, including some of them playing guitars with the camera, bless their hearts. And there's not a wrong answer, but it is a universal constant that everyone's had to deal with it.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
We spent the first 20 freaking minutes of the conversation talking about something that everybody already knows, but I think it's worth it checking down again, right? I mean, good Lord. So on that, I love so I like, first of all, when I say your new recording, I have to be more specific. And I love that as well. But you break down, not for me, obviously I know about it, but break down this latest one, the one you just sent the artwork over at the time of this recording.
Yeah.
This is pure, and I mean this as a compliment. This is pure dead nonsense. But I love it. I love it dearly because you guys are on your own plane of existence. But I feel this is very clever and interesting. So in your own words, Jem, can you explain this new release, the new release?
Well, what I can tell you about it is it wouldn't, this is one silver lining. It would not have happened if it weren't for everything stopping. And that's sort of because we've always been so busy and always looking ahead and planning, we've tended to do things with a somewhat shorter attention span. But I come from, before I met Jace, the music I played, I would be, my bands wrote 40-minute songs, and I would sometimes, we would improvise for, like, I'm not joking, like 4 or 5 hours at a time. So I kind of came from that long form thing. And then when I met Jace, it was almost like, two opposing, Jace really is how I kind of learned about what punk really was, because I grew up in the 90s. I had the unfortunate experience of hearing punk as, Blink 182 and all these fucking horrid bands, frankly. So there's always been this sort of thing of like, oh, maybe it'd be good to do something a bit more long form. And when we realized, hey, we're going to have to stop singing, like we can rehearse, but we can't sing. And that's probably maybe how the shows will be. We sort of started thinking about, it's funny because everything just evolves with us as it goes along. And so we probably remember it slightly differently. But I think what happened was I said to Jace, hey, I want to kind of do our version of Dead Man. I want to do like
the soundtrack, the Jim Jarmusch. So for those not familiar, well, first of all, school yourself. But the brilliant soundtrack that is Neil Young scoring the Jim Jarmusch movie, and it's just him. It's just guitar, and like
yes,
and there's diegetic noises. Like I think he was like some traffic noises at some point. I was like, dude, it's a Western, and it's like, but it's part of the soundtrack.
The car slam, that door that slams, it just fucks me. I'm like, what is happening? Yeah.
They didn't have that in Western times. Was that somebody slamming the horse door? Like, what is that?
Yeah. So I think that's where we started. Yeah, and that the concept being, oh, hey Jace, I would like to do something where the album soundtracky in the sense that, hey, we might repeat the same idea, 3 or 4 times, and I'd like to be able to pull that off the way Neil Young did.
Right.
Set your goals, achievable. And I think we started working on that idea, but then very quickly, and this is the good thing with Jace, we can both have a different sort of motive, and it's okay. We just keep working together. I almost liken it to 2 toddlers, how they play next to each other, and
right.
they're in different realities, but it's fine. They can still. So the opening track is the first. It predates Dead as a band, so we wrote it in our old band about 15 years ago, and we actually recorded it. And I was like, no, we didn't quite nail it, so we never released it. And we always intended to kind of do something with it down the line. And then it suddenly felt like, oh, now we've got time to do that. And that starts side A. And side B starts with a track that was actually written for Raving Drooling, but was kind of a bit too, I don't know, just not kind of metal enough. And it was always written as a kind of part 2,
right,
to the first track. So we kind of was like, all right, we've got those. How do we, bring them together? And essentially it just became an album that was both one long piece, but also little pieces. I think I spent a lot of time saying, look, I don't want to go down that path of like the doom bands where it's a 20-minute song because they just play one riff forever, which I love. I grew up doing that, but I think Jace particularly
all love, but other bands have done it, so yeah.
yeah. So then we started basically viewing it as okay, this album will be our version of an orchestra. Like if Dead was an orchestra, how might we approach it? And yeah, it sort of started to become clear, all right, there's not going to be, I think we just didn't sing on it because at the risk of sounding wanky, sometimes it's easier to express how you feel if you just stop using words. They're a bit too specific sometimes, and maybe, I find it harder to get them right. We put the whole thing together when we were just in isolation. A lot of stop-start, a lot of, okay, we can rehearse this week. Oh, now we can't. We don't know when we can again. A few technically illegal rehearsals where we were like, fuck this. People are allowed to go to work, but we're not allowed to rehearse. No, we're going to rehearse because we had a space in which we could do it where we were a long way from each other.
Right. Just get yourself a yacht. A yacht.
And and so it just kind of is a really fun experience to put it together. That there's a few songs there where I think it's the second or third track. Jace came in and just said, "I've written you a song, Jem. Like this is."
Oh.
It was a weird feeling. I think it was like we're seeing each other often, but we can't hug each other and we can't do the things that we would normally do. So we missed each other as well. Like, Jace would sort of come around sometimes and just, wave through the window, and I'd be on the other side of the window going, yeah, this is insane. Like,
and you're there, but you're not really there. It's almost like you're, did you ever see the television show Quantum Leap with Dean Stockwell as the hologram?
No, I haven't. No, I feel like I should.
It's a good enough show, but they used to watch with my dad. The Dean Stockwell character was like his guide and advisor, but he was a hologram. So even if they were like hanging out or having like a rough moment or something, you can't like console him or anything. Like he's not there. He's actually in the future, beamed back as like a thing of light, So anyway, I just wanted to make a hologram analogy and talk about a show you've never seen. So that's an analogy, yeah.
But yeah, look, we just started putting it together,
and you've never seen, by the way, it's just like that. Yeah.
And I very much, the way I approached how to play this stuff, I really was constantly in the back of my mind thinking of the final Harvey Milk album, which
sure, yeah,
that album blows me away, and the way that Kyle plays the drums on that is so, again, going back to that sort of orchestra idea, he's so just dedicated to supporting the song. I don't think he does a fill maybe until like he basically doesn't really do a fill actually on the whole album. If you think about it, he's constantly playing with the guitar. Or so I know I had a few ideas like that too. I was like, I'm not going to do any fills until the end, so there's a lot of things that were different for us. I have no idea if when people listen to it, they might go, oh, it just sounds like another Dead record. I don't know. But for us, it was very, very different. And another thing that was really cool is we were able to record the album in the same room that we wrote it, which was just really, everything, I guess, has taken on a different meaning, during this time. And it just felt really special because we were, during the writing, one day, a good friend of ours, she was walking with a friend down by the creek, which happens, sort of be near the studio that we were rehearsing in. And she said, oh, we just kind of lay down and we were really struggling. We lay down in the grass and then we could hear you like playing this piece over and over. And we, it just really meant a lot to us. And I don't know, it just felt really good to be able to go, all right, well, in that same space that we wrote it all, we can, record it. And yeah, so that's what we did. And we, our friend Jenny plays sax. We sort of made her be the horn section. So the poor woman had to do like 4 sax parts and stuff like that. And yeah, and there's also we took a very deliberate approach to, there's quite a few moments on the record that are completely live. There's no overdubs. There is no effects on anything.
Okay, so that's interesting because I think now that you say that, now it's like, oh yeah, I can notice that. But at the time, I wasn't thinking about that. I was just sort of like thinking. What I was thinking about is that it's such an overutilized term, but it seems cinematic to me, and the fact that it seemed like it was almost in support of a movie you weren't singing or something.
Oh, it's very deliberately. We wrote it with that in mind. Basically, the idea that if we had the budget, there would be a movie.
Then we'll go with it. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Of course. What else these guys getting next? Oh, they made a movie. Of course they did.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Why wouldn't they?
And yeah, and it's all very, like I said, so I guess where it shifted from that original sort of Deadman idea was every single bar is deliberately there. Like there's no, so I spent a lot of time deciding, oh, should that go for 5 or should that go for 3 or should that go for, 4.5 or something. And it's all really deliberately put together. And we rehearsed it as one long, 40-minute piece over and over and over. And then we recorded it in order. Every song is the first take on that recording.
Oh, really? Interesting. Okay.
Except the first song. I think what I did is, because usually, your first day is mainly setting up drums and stuff, and then you start recording,
right?
And you're a bit tired. So I think I came in on the second day and I said, I think I can do a better job of the first song. So we redid the first song, but everything else was just, we just played it once and really deliberately wanted to keep it warts and all. Like I really wanted to keep that, I think particularly for me, a lot of the bands that we sort of get kind of associated with, a lot of them tend to overdo it production-wise for my liking. And it's just, in the modern day, everything's become more and more, everyone's trying to sound as heavy as they can, and they're often leaning on technology to do that.
Sure. Yeah. Rather than sounding like a rock band, they want to sound like, you know, the End of Times or something. Where it's like, okay, well, it sounds crazy, all right, but yeah.
Yeah, and there's no rules. Like that works awesome for a band like Killing Joke or Ministry or something, where you want it to sound so, you know, hyper real. But yeah, so that for that reason, I didn't make a rule, but when we mixed it, there is no effects. So all the reverb you hear is room reverb, and that's it. That's that's it. You know, I just didn't want to lean on any kind of effects. I just wanted it to sound like us. And yes, there's quite a few layers in parts, but even every one of them, like basically Jace had to send them through me to be approved. You know, I was like, I don't want a single, you know, guitar just because we thought, hey, should we throw an extra guitar here? Like, no, every piece is yeah, it's got a reason.
Puzzle, yeah, right? It's there for a reason, right? Sure.
Yeah, and so we think of it like the orchestra is us. That's it. And there's that, you know, when that third guitar comes in, that's a third guitarist that's just been waiting the whole time. As you, you know, I've played in an orchestra before, and it's terrifying. You just wait.
Okay.
Yeah, and you count 72 bars, and you go, "Fuck! I hope I'm at the right spot." And then you go to hit the bass drum, and yeah. And I've also been the person that fucked up in an orchestra and hit the wrong thing at the wrong time, and it's up there as one of the, you know, if I could erase a moment from my memory, it's that's one.
Doesn't sound like it'd be very fun. Yeah, I mean that's
Well,
there's something about the patience of doing that it's, I think, you know, it is very common in orchestral music, but within rock music especially, I feel like, especially with guys, everybody's got to be going the entire time.
Yeah. Like, why is Kirk Hammett playing guitar in Metallica half the time? You go, what's he actually doing?
What value are you adding right now? You're just playing, playing. Like, whatever. That's we've come to accept that as just an arrangement choice. But there is something to be said for subtraction and addition. You know, like I've had to, you know, lecture people is the wrong word, but I've had to sort of guide people in my own band of like, no, don't play there. Just let it be. Let it be for a couple measures, then come in, and then that'll actually have more impact than if you were just going the whole time. And and to want to play, you're there to play, right? But there's what you're doing, and there's what people are hearing, and I think that restraint, you know, I think that definitely comes with age, and it's just, I mean, I don't want to be sexist about it, but female players are just more intuitive towards it, I feel.
I mean, that's There's a whole other podcast in unpacking that, but I tend to agree with you, and I have my, you know, sort of theories as to why, but I think that you're right, and it's particularly why, you know, I think often women are great drummers because they are team players and they play to the song rather than try to show off, but the way that we really approach this, you know, is, again, it's about, and again, if you think to that Harvey Milk album, it's about active silence. So at every moment,
as a composition, or not?
Yes. I mean, you decide, what am I going to do and what am I not going to do?
Yeah.
And they're both just as important. So much of this record is me deciding not to play something,
right?
Which probably doesn't, you know, who's ever going to know? But
it's like the setup to a joke, right? Oh, it's the notes he didn't play, but it is the kind of the notes he didn't play. You know, it's like that we don't have capacity to deal with that earnestly and engage with it, because when we think of, you know, everybody wants to make their John Cage joke. Hey, great, I've done it myself. You know, like, and it's very funny to like adopt like some sort of like snobby voice while saying it, but space matters.
Yes,
and it is a choice.
Yeah, and working with it is I guess like anything. So you've got, one extreme where a band, which, I can enjoy bands like this as well, but bands, like Dillinger Escape Plan or Converge or even like At the Drive-In or something where they're just sort of relentlessly going for it all the time.
Mars Volta is it's just like, oh my God, settle down, Beavis.
Yeah, and then you've got bands that go to the other extreme. Like, oh, okay, yeah, we're not going to be like that, so we'll just be really, really minimal. Like they've maybe taken like a lot of influence from a band like Shellac or something, and then they've gone, yeah, but we're going to go. But for me, it's about the bit that's more challenging is the that area that's right in the middle, which is I'm not going to just stick to one idea. I'm going to sort of be open as I'm doing it, and it becomes a bit more elastic. Like I guess what I find with a lot of those bands at either extreme is I start to get bored because I know what energy they're going to give me all the time. Even when that, do you remember Dog Shredder?
Oh, I
fuck, man. One of the best. They opened Total Fest one year that we played with them. They played at like 6 p.m. or something and just fucking destroyed the place.
We played a show in my old band and like I didn't know anything. I was like, that's an audacious name. And then they started playing. I'm like, oh my God. So much so that they played on, it was a Monday night at the Stork
Awesome.
Club, which is this is later on. They played in Oakland, where I'm from. And it was a Monday night, already bad, right? And then somehow like 2 bills got booked and they got put together. Additionally, very bad. And they were the last out of like 7 bands. And they were on tour. This Bellingham is where Dog Shredder was from.
Yes.
And I had played with them. So I knew. And I'm sitting there like calling up every friend I have. Come out right now to the Stork Club. I know how that sounds. Just do it. You will not regret if you come to this show, you will not regret it. Just like hard selling anyone that would listen. And I got maybe 7 people out. Which, to be fair,
it's not bad for a Monday.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mean, and every single one of them, and they not only played an amazing set, they played their cover of Heart of the Sunrise by Yes.
Oh,
and
wow.
Every single one of those 7 people were like, thank you so much for dragging me out to this because this band is incredible. I'm like, cool. Thank you for coming out on a Monday night at like 12:30 at night, after a 7-band bill to see this band with this absurd name because they are freaking awesome. But yeah,
and they were rare in their ability to maintain
total maximalist.
They come out of the gates and you think, oh shit, this isn't gonna hold up, and then 10 minutes later you're like, fuck me, I'm tired just watching you.
This is just what they do. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And
so
because the drums, I mean, like I think it's easier to do as a guitar player, but like as a drummer, I mean, he's just just go and go, and you're like, good Lord, where's he getting this energy from?
And so I love that. But yeah, I guess on this record we were trying to just almost, I guess, play music that you wouldn't necessarily notice the musicians. You would just hear the music. And also, I think the other thing for us, everything sort of post, probably like our first 3 albums. Our first 3 albums were just, we're on tour. These are our songs that we most want to record. Get in the room, smash it out, and release it ASAP, move on. And then after that, I started to really produce them more and direct them more and go, I don't want each album to sort of follow the same pattern, and I'm happy to, that song maybe will hold off and it'll go on the next album. So more and more we want to make sure when we make an album that we're exploring a new idea rather than just repeating the same sort of ideas. So that's why this one is, I feel like it's the most singularly focused record we've ever done and perhaps ever will. And
scratches a different itch for sure. I mean, you guys, you're definitely not a band that repeats yourself. very much. But this scratches a very specific itch, and it's interesting because it's not one I've heard from you before. I like it.
Yeah, and also just making it in that weird isolation. It's like, well, fuck, we actually don't know what it sounds like. Like there's no way of sort of. The only people that heard it were the 3 people that performed on it and the 2 people that helped record it. Like the guy who owns the studio and Mike, who recorded Raving Drooling, recorded this album as well.
And me,
and now you, yeah, exactly, yeah.
And then I immediately take a nap afterwards.
Yeah, so it's really strange because I literally just before logging on here, I walked up the hill where the last time I spoke to you on this show,
I went in the beast you were seeing, the beast in the fields.
Yeah. And it's surreal because it's like, oh fuck, a lot has happened and a lot more has not happened in the meantime.
Testify.
Yeah, and I've never done so little moving around. Like we still haven't gone into state. Funnily enough, when you called, when we spoke last time, we had just cancelled. Well, we hadn't, but Hawes had just cancelled their tour, and I think it's been rebooked 2 or 3 times.
Finally, it's finally happening, as it seems. Yes.
Yeah. So I just hope that they get here and they play, and if we also make it to the shows, then great. That's sort of where things are at now.
Crazy. That has to be where it's at now, right? I mean, like,
yeah,
where you're just like, well, I'm pretty sure there's this really cool thing happening, but we'll see. Like there's always room for time. There's time for things to fall apart still, And
I think it's a weird mix because this from, I almost didn't want to bring up Caterwall because I'm so like gutted that I couldn't be there, but I'm so stoked that it happened and all that. But as people that play in bands and organize stuff, we constantly live about 6 months or more in the future.
Yes.
And now we're in this weird period of time where we, sort of still have to do that, but kind of don't. And so as an example, when we last spoke, our album was coming out anyway. So we didn't delay. And frankly, I didn't see the point in delaying because we want to always keep working. So,
yeah.
But at least for us, it was an easy decision. I'm not criticizing. I know for other bands, like, I know you had Red Fang and stuff, there's a lot more at stake for them, so whereas we're sort of going, look, we're just doing our thing. We'll keep on going.
Well, even that Service record that just came out, which is one of my favorite, it might be my favorite of the year, but they kind of sat on that for a while as well. And then eventually kind of soft-footed it forward, and now it's out. And like, it's great because now they can go out and support it because, again, we willed COVID away. So,
yes,
but I fully get, while, last record we did, at a certain point, it was like, just do it. I can't sit on this any longer. Like, I don't like, to me, it's becoming an impossible task not to have this record out. And then, and knowing full well that it's not going to necessarily get the attention it would if there had been like touring behind it, because that's where smaller bands sell music is on tour, as you well know. And when that's just not there for you, it's like, well, you could just stop, or you could choose to be zen about it and be like, it's going to be what it's going to be. And I think it's that's how I have tried to adopt the personality I've tried to adopt. Notice the we're doing all the work in that sentence is try.
Yes, yeah.
I've tried to adopt that philosophy. But
well, look, it's all about trying to find the path of least resistance. Like what might work here. And for us, I can tell you one thing I'm doing is I haven't made a release date yet because I haven't printed the covers. And
right.
I'm just not doing it now until I know they exist.
You can see them.
Yeah,
You
because
see the truck coming down the road, and you see them like bouncing in the back like a cartoon.
yeah, and then
Right.
when I've finished printing them, I will then work out probably a short release schedule. But I just don't. Everyone's gone through this process of pre-ordering an album that takes 6 months, and I just don't want to do that again.
A literal chill just went up my spine when you said that.
Yeah.
This past trauma. Although I will say, I think for the most part, people now kind of get it, that it's just like, hey man, it's going to be out when it's going to be out. But there's always one or two that, a week later, hey, where's the record? And it was like,
yeah,
I don't know. Nobody knows. But I think everyone else has kind of got it. I don't know, but not enough for me to be like, yeah, putting a pre-order up. But it's like, yeah, I'll send a pre-order up when it's like, no, we have an actual deadline, a real date when it might show up. Not like hey, it could be ... I just won't do that. I won't do that to myself, let alone the consumer.
Yeah, it's one of those things that even though people are, they're understanding, it just adds to your admin hours and all of that. Like,
it's more
shit. Okay, better email everyone and say, hey, thanks for hanging in there. All those things. So I'm just trying to limit that and give myself more time to do the stuff, like do the art, not try and sell it. So that's what the balance is for the next little while. And it probably just means, in a way, for us just pressing a few less than we normally would.
Right.
Yeah. So even like actually Raving Drooling sold really well, which was crazy because we've always only sold stuff on tour.
Made my even of whatever the year that was.
But even that I wouldn't rely on as like, data or whatever, because that was the start of the pandemic, and things were different then. So, and I can say for the few shows we've been able to do over the last couple of years, I don't know if anyone else is experiencing this, but we've been selling a lot more T-shirts and just fuck all records. So I don't know if maybe people are over it or they don't have that money to spend now or whatever. But I'm certainly not, I'm never assuming that because we sold 400 or 500 of the last, that the next one we can sell as many, because there's also just little factors that you can't rely upon, like
or predict.
Yeah, like you might just we did well media coverage on the last one, and I guess that's because all these media outlets had nothing to do, so they were
to cover. Exactly.
Yeah, so they were upping their coverage.
They were too busy for podcasts. Suddenly their schedules cleared up, and it's like, great.
Yes.
Well, and we've talked a bit about a lot of what you guys have done during the pandemic, but now there's multiple versions of the Dead live band. There's like multiple iterations.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit of that? Because I think obviously I'm interested in that. Like, I think that's I'm for it. But like, what's the logic there, and how did that come to pass?
So I guess how did it come to pass was, when we started, we just wanted to go and go as hard as we could, and we never said, let's form a band that just is a two-piece. It was more the practicalities of we are the two people that are willing to do all this, and so then we will then play the music that we can as the two of us. And people always sort of see it as almost like a disability or something, like, oh geez, you do well despite only having two people, but
you don't have another friend.
Yeah, but very quickly you learn that there's all these strengths, all these things that you can only do in a two-piece format that you can't do with three. So I reckon maybe over the last few years, like even maybe pre-pandemic, Jace was more, like showing an interest in working with others more so than me. I was a bit like, I'm happy to do it either way. And we did do an album as a 3-piece with a guy called BJ Morazonkel, and that was, we wrote all that music for him.
Right. It was specifically for that thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And but the other thing that was tough about that was the reality was I think we only played twice or something in that lineup. And we certainly weren't going to be able to go on tour or anything. But it was still fun to do. But the thing about adding someone to our band that's difficult is essentially the way we operate. It depends on the music. Like this new album's a bit different, but the way we play is like, it's like you're on a mountain bike hurtling downhill, and it's really important to us to play that way. Like we never stop for either. If one of us fucks up, we do not stop and help. We keep going and we trust that you'll work it out.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And that it's a really, really important. Like a lot of my favorite bands, not all of them, but like a lot of bands share that. Vaz are sort of that sort of band as well, where they're always like, this could fall apart, and in fact, I've seen it fall apart, and they just push through it and make it even better. So that element is really important to us. And what it means is when we've tried to play with others, they often just say to us, "Oh, I don't know you've got your own language. I don't know what's going on here."
Yeah. It can be daunting, right? Because you're basically like strapping yourself to a boulder rolling down a hill to a certain degree.
Yeah. And we don't want to sort of compromise. We want them to just jump in and just go for it. So Tommy, who has started playing with us in the sort of 3-piece mode, he's from my old high school band, and that band was drums and 2 basses, and I felt pretty confident that he could be that person, and he has been. He's actually been really, like, he hasn't played really in a band for like the last 10 years, and he's still got this like arrogance in a beautiful way when he plays with us. Like he's just joined the band. He's like, I'm in the band. Like, I'm just going to tell you. We rehearsed last night, and he's just like, I think that we should start the song with that riff instead of that one. And I was like, ooh.
Sorry, call it arrangement decisions.
That's a bit bold, isn't it? But what we said to him, we said, we want to work with you. We won't teach you songs in the rehearsal room. Like, you need to sort of do your homework. And we'll write songs together, obviously. But the other thing we said we won't stop doing what we do. So you just tell us what you can and can't do, and we will go on and do the other things anyway. So when we go and play with Hawes in New South Wales, he won't come with us because he's got a job, and he doesn't like that. Actually doesn't appeal to him that much. To say, I'll take time off work and go and play a support slot where most likely the crowd won't like what I'm doing, and
maybe they'll like, maybe they won't. It's a roll the dice.
Yeah, so he's just he's great, and what I'm really enjoying about it is, we started doing the ambient shows as a way of being able to play in different spaces, like particularly rock and roll. It sucks when you try and play it in like a cavernous room or something. So the ambient stuff we can do anywhere. And what I've enjoyed, most of the shows we've done have been 2 hours long, and it's kind of an endurance test, it's almost like a breathing exercise thing. Like, okay, I'm going to build up now. I'm going to build up over 20 minutes, not 30 seconds.
Right. You're spreading it out almost. You're spreading out the intensity.
Yeah, and you sort of think, we must be nearly done. Like, this 2 hour set, surely we're at an hour and a half, and you look down at your time and you're like,
2 minutes.
No, we're 20 minutes in. Like, I guess I better think of something. So, sorry, I'm going around in circles a bit here, but the whole idea was, yep, let's do something with Tommy. And we said to Tommy, like, you know, we want to work on an album with you. And but then we thought, yeah, we still want to do the other shows. And then it's just been about, the whole thing with Dead has been like, what challenge can we do next? And what cheeky thing can we do that is what like real bands do? You know, like that's always been a bit of a thing for us. Like, hey, let's pretend that, you know, we're the Melvins or something, like a band that like people, you know, follow, and let's just have the audacity to do that shit. So, you know, what's another thing that is going to really fucking, in some ways, make life harder, but make life more interesting for us? Oh, why don't we have 3 versions of the one band? And the reason it's exciting is because we don't play any. There's maybe 1 or 2 songs that we maybe play in the 2 and the 3-piece format, but for the most part, that means right now, you know, which is funny because we're not really playing very many shows, but it means right now we have, you know, more than 3 completely different sets, and we play very differently. If it's 2 or 3, if it's 2, it's that more kind of like we were talking about with Dog Shredder or something. It's just like go, 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 you know, and constantly trying to, well, how can I play a lead and a rhythm part at the same time? And you're trying to do those sort of, I guess, typical 2-piece kind of things. And then in the 3-piece, it's crazy how different it is. And I go, shit, all I need to do is just play a beat. Like,
you don't have to fill up all the space of an entire band, right? I mean,
yeah. And so keeping those in your brain, like at the same time, is actually a lot more challenging than I thought.
Yeah.
And that's what we love about it. And we are really lucky that we have, you know, people that come to our shows, and some of them come again and again, and no matter what crappy venue we play in, and they keep coming, they never mind that. We've had a few people come up to us and say, you know what, I actually don't even need to know if you're going to play a noise set or a 3-piece set or a 2-piece set. Right. I actually like the surprise.
That's great. I mean, that means you've earned the trust, right, for the people that are there, and like that's
yeah. And we set it up.
Artist.
You know, from the beginning, we basically set it up that way. We never ever did that thing that, you know, I know a lot of bands do, but I find it really boring. The idea of like, okay, we'll release an album and then we'll make sure we play the songs off that album. And I'm not trying, like, we don't not do that because we want to punish people. We just, usually by the time an album is released, we are very much moved on to, you know, the next thing. So we just play what excites us. And that tends to be whatever we're currently writing. And, you know, and half the time if I ask Jay, say, let's play that old song, he just goes, I can't remember it. Sorry. Like, I can't remember it, and it's not important enough to me to relearn it. So I'm just going to write a new song. And I go, oh, okay.
Well,
you guys complain with that
material. I mean, you know, good Lord. Like it reminds you of like you know, that Dutch band, the X, not X, the letter X, but the XEX.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what those practices look like, but like they have, you know, they've been continuously making records since like, you know, whatever, the late 70s or something. So it's, you know, I'm sure the conversations are probably somewhat similar of like, how's that one go? Oh, who cares? Whatever. Let's just move on. You know,
yeah.
Unless it's like an all-time banger, you know, and in which case maybe you'll remember it, and maybe not. And also, who cares, and move on and make a whole new record. And that's great too.
And also partly because we've written so many, we do, it's not like people don't ask. We do have songs that people ask to play.
Sure.
But then we're like, okay, do we relearn that one because that one guy in Bendigo really wants to hear it?
the one person. Yeah, the one guy. Like, yeah. The one I like. Okay.
But then someone else in Melbourne has asked for something else. And so, you know, and so, yeah, it's just,
you know, you're the world's most unique and specific jukebox. And so,
But yeah, I have to say, people are really, really, I know that we created it as well, but I am very thankful for the fact that our, you know, fans are willing to not every time they see us, they're willing to see literally an entire set of music that's never been released, and they're okay with that.
You've earned that goodwill and trust that like they know whatever they're going to see is going to be worth their time, which is great. I mean, that's that's no mean feat in this day and age. Like, you know, especially in this era that I feel like, you know, personally, that all social media and whatnot has elevated the audience over the art in a lot of cases. And
yes, I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
I got strong feelings about that too, but it's a different show. So I think that's a great place for you guys, and the kind of folks that engage with it. You know, like Josh Vanek is the first person that, you know, I heard about you guys from. I'm like years and years ago, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll have to remember that, and I didn't for many years. But like, look, Josh is a hard sell. You know, he's not someone that pulls his sword and puts it in service of someone very often. So it means a lot when he does. And
yeah,
you got a lot of those kinds of folks in your corner, of which, you know, in some capacity I would call myself as well, you know. And it's not an army, but it certainly is a round table.
yeah. Yeah, Josh is great, and he's going to release this album in the States. Right. Yeah, it's hard. It's a funny time to. I've always actually been confused as to really what a label is, and I run a label, but I don't know what it is. I think it's maybe because I became obsessed with music at 5 years old. And I could not get enough of it. And we had a CD player that was in like 1990 or something. So like we had a CD player in my house pretty early on. And I would go to the library and just borrow whatever CD, you know, there was. And most of it was awful. And
but then at least you have to pay for it, you know.
Exactly. And I think by the time I started to learn that, you know, record labels exist, I sort of like was too far into like an obsession with bands. So I don't know how to explain it, but I never joined those dots. And maybe particularly because I was underage, so I wasn't able to like go to the events and things like that. So I wouldn't have learned about you know, labels like Discord or whatever. So by the time I worked out that exists, I just was like, oh, I actually never noticed that when I buy a record. I never notice who released it or yeah, the reason I say all that is Wantage is one of those labels that for me actually really flipped that. And I just consumed every band he released, and I found them all interesting in one way or another, and I loved how different, you know, I think I discovered him through Big Business.
Sure.
You know, and then I started, you know, and then I, you know, Drunk Horse and FedEx, and
yeah,
I was like, yeah, there's something that does join these bands together, but it's not style, like it's not image or style.
Yeah, it's like mindset, ethos.
Yeah.
Shared delusion, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and so that feels. I mean, I literally have the test pressing of that first Red Fang album.
Yeah.
Because, and there might be 4 listeners that appreciate this reference, but because he sent it to me and said, "Hey, Brian from Last of the Juanitas has a new band. You know, I know you love Last of the Juanitas, and you might dig this." And you know, then like he just has that knack of connecting and trusting bands to do what they do. And I trust that he actually really has our best interest at heart, because I've seen him with those bands, you know, support them and then like shuffle them on to somewhere bigger if need be. He doesn't sort of go, no, that's mine. You know, you said you were going to work with me. Like there's, yeah.
I have two quick Last the Juanitas sidebars. One of which is I saw them play at somebody's kitchen in Oakland.
Awesome.
Full stacks, like full bore, but it was in somebody's kitchen. And I was maybe one of two people there that knew who they were, but there was just a very surprised group of party goers. And it was fantastic, by the way. And I saw them many times. And remember when I told you about like getting people out to see Dog Shredder on Monday and there being 7 people? That's about what the crowd usually was. And like it was like me and like Tim Green and like 5 other people. It's like okay. But I love that band. I love that band so much that at the time, what was the biggest show I'd ever played, which was support for Trans Am, I made special certain I wore a Last of the Juanitas t-shirt specifically because I knew it was gonna be a well photographed event. And I wanted to be like, I wanted to be Last of the Juanitas because that's a band that deserves to be known. And then I just remember because we played some shows with Party Time too. Like I said, we're a very dangerous show at an opium den, former opium den in San Francisco that was structurally unsound. That was Big Business and Party Time and us. And in retrospect, wow, what a terrible idea. But Party Time was the band in between Last of the Juanitas and Red Fang. And I remember when that first Red Fang came out, I was like, oh, the Party Time guys have like a cool Sabbath sounding band. Oh, neat, right on. And like I was like, oh, this is good. Didn't think too much about it. And then the video for Prehistoric Dog came out. I was like, that's a very funny video. And then like, explosion of amazingness. And they went off like a rocket ship into the night. And I was like, oh, that's great. Because like all those guys are like a bunch of gnarled old alley cats that just basically are doing what they love. And they're getting to pay it forward. Like, and put all the weirder bands that they like on and just make a living like being rad dudes playing rad riffs.
Probably like a rare moment where that organic thing happened, like as in a film clip actually went viral and at least
it wasn't horse
underground level.
Actually good. It was actually something of value and like worthwhile rather than being like, oh, this is whatever, some precious acoustic cover of some 80s hit. Great, never seen that before. Like it was just a really wonderful moment, and I'm forever grateful for Aaron coming on doing not just a 1 but a 2-part episode, like breaking down everything. I really should have Brian Giles on again because I had him on like episode 4 or something. I really didn't know what the hell I was doing then. So I should definitely have him on again because I love that guy. And that's a perfect example of a band just that they do what they want to do. And they found an audience doing it and freaking awesome. That's
yeah.
I don't know why I got on it. You mentioned Last of Juanitas and that's a band that couldn't get arrested, man. I love that. I love that band, but like nobody would come see them play. And like,
you can hear it like, in their music, you go, yeah, this sounds great, and I'd be pretty surprised if they were popular. I don't know why. Like, as in, everyone I've ever played them to goes, yeah, this I love it. This rips. But
it just,
look, sometimes I don't know what they were like on stage either. Like I can tell you with Dead, like it
was intense. Again, when they played someone's kitchen, I'm like, how in the name of fuck are you gonna have Last Juanitas play your kitchen? And they did, and people were just more like, whoa. And
maybe they kind of had that energy that it's weird. I can tell you that we had a band before Dead, called Fangs of, and I thought that's how I met Jace, through that music. I thought, this will be fun to be in a band that's actually maybe going to be a bit popular because his songs are really good. Prior to that, I'd played only kind of experimental music, and that band with Jace was the least popular thing I've ever done in my life. Again and again and again and again, and everything that could go wrong went wrong, and we would go back and back and back to the same cities, and people just fucking hated us, and I couldn't get my head around it. But I will say, as soon as then we formed Dead, those same places were different, and I think part of it was actually that our attitude, we were just in Dead we're always much more likely to kind of engage with the audience or something, and in Fangs of we were just kind of like head down, and we were not angry dudes at all, but in retrospect I can see how it seemed that way.
Right.
And I, I as a audience member love to see that.
Yeah.
Like that's like bands like Vaz and even the Melvins. And the first time we saw Vaz, we were like in love and terrified of them. Like that's not going to stop me loving their music. Like
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Unstoppable force, meaning an immovable object. It's like, oh
yeah. So yeah, sometimes that plays a role, even though you don't realize it. Because I know with Dead, I made a really deliberate attempt, because we do a lot of regional touring, and frankly, we play a lot of places where a brown person walking into the pub is a bit weird. So I just made a rule. I was like, every time we go to one of these places, the first thing I do is I walk up to the bar and find the local, like the roughest looking, get out of my patch sort of dude, and just say g'day and look him in the eye and just say, hey, thanks for, even if it's not his pub, just, hey, thanks for having us. We're going to be playing later tonight. And, and it's actually amazing how much that can turn things around, and how often those people have then watched us play because they're no longer scared of us, because we've established. It's like, then they can go, oh, the thing you're doing seems a bit scary, but I know that you're not, because
I talked to you earlier. We're talking about, like whatever, like television. Yeah. And that's, I think I agree with you. I think that there's something to be said for, you can, it's not like even disarming a situation so much as it's just engaging with someone on a human level, that it changes the scope of the interaction.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm always surprised by people that feel there's power in being aloof and that's a cape flap for the listener. I did like a cape.
Yeah.
And it's like, come off it. Who do you think you are? Like, no.
It's never excited me, that either. You touched on it before, like that whole rock star thing. It's actually always been the opposite for me. Like, I remember as a kid seeing an underage Mr. Bungle show, which really was quite life-changing for me.
Sure, yeah.
But what made it better, was the fact that Trey and Trevor and maybe one of the others were just sort of hanging out with us before they played, and they weren't rock stars at all. And I was like, that's what I want. Like, I don't want to see someone that thinks they're better than us. I want to see someone that loves what they do, and has sort of humility or humbleness maybe, because it makes it all the more powerful. Then suddenly you see that guy shredding, and you're like, shit,
yeah, man.
It's actually more intense, because I've confirmed that he's a human being, not some, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly. That's, I don't know. I don't understand why people think they can get away with, like, oh, maybe they'll think I'm a demigod. No, they're not going to think you're a demigod. They're going to think you're a dick. Is what they're going to think.
Yeah. Look, it depends on the receiver. I think some people are looking for that. They're looking for a leader. But when I look for a good footballer, I look for someone that's good at football, not someone that's good at football and then is going to also tell me how to live, And similarly with a musician, really, I fucking love music. So I want to see someone that loves it, play it. And I don't need to then hold them on a pedestal in any other area except where they have proven it. Like, yes, that person rips on drums, but
sure,
it's okay if they're not the greatest at other things,
Yeah. Speaking of other things, how are things going in Australia? I know that you've kind of been championing the ideas of making sure that musicians are being paid for their time and for their work and for the effort, and not just paid in high fives.
Yeah,
as we say here, and by we I mean me.
Well, it's been an interesting time for that, and again, potentially a bit of a silver lining, like a silver lining to a massive cloud of shit. Like, I don't think that it weighs the shitty, but some of the things that are fairly different, I guess, down here is there are more opportunities within the music world that include government, funding. And those opportunities have traditionally been very gatekept by certain people in the industry. So it's been more about
isn't considered art is, like considered an objective truth by those people, where in reality it's the most subjective of subjectivity.
Yeah, but not just that, just literally people who have made a career out of, getting that funding and not distributing it to the musicians. Because that's the way usually those fundings work, like, hey, we've just announced $1 million to this sector. And it's like, yeah, what you mean is $1 million is going to mates of yours who will then put on shows and rip bands off and buy another, investment property in Europe. And you can say, hey, yeah, we injected $1 million into that sector, but you didn't. You gave it to a few people up the top, and it did not trickle down, despite, I don't know if that's a term that's used over there, but it's a big one that's used here by politicians.
Trickle down economics, to which I say the only trickling down is usually urine.
Yeah, and not just that, but how fucking offensive a term is it to use? Like, that they don't even realize how gross that is. It's saying, hey, they're not saying it's a faucet, and we're going to,
no, you might get a drop or two. Yeah.
It's literally like that scene in Mad Max, where they're like waiting for the water and then they turn it off. That's what trickle down sounds like. So what's happened over the last couple of years, though, has been, I guess, the opportunity for people to no longer, turn a blind eye to. I think there's going back to that smoke and mirrors. Like, I think musicians have been their own worst enemy, often putting on a facade of everything being good when in fact it's not. So, not wanting to, be public about venues or promoters ripping you off because that that's going to affect you in the future. And I've been one of them, I've been someone that's, been ripped off and kind of kept it to myself because I don't want to be known as a troublemaker. But I think what happened during this time is both Jason and I went, you know what, fuck that. Like, people should have to stand by the things that they do, and you shouldn't feel bad about just telling the truth, when it's not an opinion, so what is changing a little bit is just trying to think of the best way to explain it, but it coincides with like I do a lot. One of my jobs is in a suicide prevention space, and so mental health has over the last few years, really changed as far as it being acknowledged. And while people are, far behind on learning about this, one thing that's easy to explain to people generally is, hey, do you care about the mental health of your workers? Yeah, sure. So
you'll probably be better at working if you do. Yes.
Yeah. So what if I told you that ripping them off affects their mental health negatively? It's kind of a difficult one to go, like that, so I think people are getting their heads around the idea that, okay, these two things matter. And we have had some ability to get people, and punters as well, behind the idea that, I would like the shows that I go to be, shows where they are not just exploiting the musicians. A friend of mine said, early on in the pandemic, she said, music in Melbourne has value for the first time in maybe 2 decades.
Wow.
So let's not, because suddenly there was less of it, So people,
So it wasn't a rarity for it to be valued, and that's
yeah. So it sort of flipped a bit, like, oh, we've got some power that we didn't have before. Yeah.
Look, I put gas in the van, gas tank today, $5 a gallon.
Yeah.
You know, it was like that was $150, and it was like, wow, all right, how much are we making at these shows?
Yeah, exactly. And those things are real. It's like, hey,
merch.
you can't pretend they're not happening. Like, so you know, you want a band to come from Melbourne to Sydney, and yeah, petrol costs at least 50% more than it did 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That cost is real. And if your business model relies on being subsidized by the bands, then you have a shit model.
And it's like, would you
yeah.
just be like, oh, maybe we'll pay you sound guy, maybe we'll pay you door guy, yeah, maybe we'll get around to that. Like, how that wouldn't be acceptable. So like, why is it acceptable to do that to the bands? Oh, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. Why don't we see how it goes if we play? How about that?
Yeah. Yeah, so look, there's been some
Thank you.
positive movement. I've also copped heaps of abuse, you know, and
Sure.
yeah, and there's a lot of people. I mean, punks are our own worst enemies as well, because there's a lot of people in the DIY scene that are so anti anything that sort of maybe puts pressure on them to actually be, you know, professional or do a good job.
Right.
And to that I say, that's okay. You can do that as well. Like, you can put on a show in a rehearsal room. You can charge $1.50 if you want entry. Like, no one's stopping you doing that. But if you're playing in a licensed venue, you know, like, you're part of a business. And you know, the costs have gone up.
But yeah.
Yeah, and the costs have gone up, and if you can afford to always play and pay to be there, that's great. You know, I envy that. But people are missing out on being in the scene because they're a single mum and they now can't afford to play, and that's shit and doesn't need, like, it's unnecessary. So I'm really coming at it from a point of view of inclusivity and you know, I guess accessibility and equity, which is saying, you know, in the time I've been playing music live, which is like 22 years or something, I've seen it become more middle class, you know, because people can't afford to be a part of it. But that's not, and that's like, we have no problem if we put on a show and 2 people turn up. We don't expect money to come down from the heavens. Like, we'll wear it. But it's when you're repeatedly playing in venues where their standard model is to pay everyone except you, and then not only not pay you properly, but take 3 or 6 months to actually pay the invoice, you know, all that shit. So yeah, I wish I could explain this a little better, but there is some positive movement, I think. And I have had bookers for the first time understand it, like, be like, yeah, actually, that's fair enough. Okay, no, we won't make you charge $10 entry. You can charge 20, or, you know, like, yeah. So that never used to happen ever. It just used to be, I really don't care what you have to say, little man. This is how we do it. Whereas now people are open to the idea of, hey, maybe things need to be different.
Well, and there's also, you know, I think about the Blind Shake album title, Celebrate Your Worth, right? Like, you're worth it.
Yeah.
You know, like, you may have all of society saying that what you do isn't important and you're just doing this for fun. And maybe it is fun, but it is also work. And you've taken the time and effort to do this thing. And people are literally paying for it. So perhaps you should see something of that, if nothing else, to keep things moving, to move forward to the next thing. Just from your practical perspective.
Yeah, and again, yeah, it's about supporting that ecosystem. Like, so that means that you go and get paid when you play a little better, and then that means when you go to make another album with Toshi, you don't say, hey, can we cram this into 4 days?
Right.
Which every sound engineer is like, dealing with the stress of all the time now. Like every sound engineer we speak to says things that used to be done in 10 days are now done in 3. Things that
Right.
So it's about like just seeing a bit of the bigger picture and going, because this kind of is there's a knock-on effect. So we have underpaid sound engineers because there's been no money in the show. So the sound engineer has said, oh, this is my fee, and we've gone, that's a bit low. But they've set it low because everyone in the industry is getting paid bugger all. So yeah, it's about just again saying, all right, if you're happy to be that band that always plays for free, think about it. Are you also paying everyone? Are you tipping when you go to the rehearsal room? Are you tipping your sound engineer? Like where does it end? Because if you're part of that, keeping those costs, those expenses lower than they should be, then you are perpetuating this poverty.
It's hard to get people to think that way and maybe re-examine or think about it for the first time. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's hard.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but yeah, I think there's some positives in there. I think it's a good time to shake things up because change is normal at the moment. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's another thing that when people are in a siege state, when people are in a situation where they expected the next bad thing to happen, they start to think of change as being exclusively something that is negative, something that will negatively affect things, that will make things incrementally worse, that will make material conditions worse off than they were before. That is not true. It's just hard to get yourself into the mindset of thinking that way because what you're going to notice more than anything else are negative trends. So,
yeah.
And I'm not talking about like the power of like, cockeyed optimism necessarily. I'm talking about it's very pragmatic. And what people don't realize now is we have been trained culturally worldwide to be cynical. And it's coached in other terms. And even some people even wear like a badge of courage. But we're being coached to be cynical and to accept only the possibilities presented to us that make money for the intervening agencies and companies that are pushing those things. And it's not true. And that's one of the things that's hardest to get people's heads wrapped around, because until you see it, until it materializes, it's just an idea. And we are now actively trained not to believe that. We're being fed the ideas. Here are the ideas that are approved for you. Here are the Netflix shows to binge watch. Here are this, that, and the other. And then until you see something like that actually happen, the majority of you in this case, it's hard for people to grasp. And so it requires people of vision, which I think this is very much something that yourself, Jem, you are a man of vision in this way, that until it actually starts happening, people almost don't understand the concept of it, or that can be reality. But it can. And everybody has this power, but because everything we have is designed to celebrate the individual without funding the needs of the individual purposely. See people wanting, they're easier to advertise to. So what that means is it's incumbent upon those of us that, the foolish, the brave, the misplaced optimism, the doomed, whatever you have it, to push forward and light the way. So I think it's fantastic, and I'm all for it. And if I wasn't doing 70,000 other things, I'd probably try to start something similar here. But it's incremental change is still change, and like getting people to rethink the situation has power. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's also about sort of kind of lost my train of thought there a bit, but it's about also like music I don't know, music fans, maybe particularly in the punk world or something, are very nostalgic, and really stuck in the past. And, so sometimes, they'll remind you that, okay, Fugazi shows were $5 or something, and you go, yeah, that was like 30 years ago,
100,000 years ago, exactly. And the material conditions were very different. Yeah.
If we applied that same, like, just with inflation to now, it would mean the show costs more than what you're proposing.
Of course.
And things change that people don't, necessarily acknowledge. So, up until CDs stopped being a thing, people paid for music. Like, that was a real thing. But there's a whole generation now that doesn't even know what that is. So, like, my niece, she's obsessed with music, and she's always sending me her playlists and stuff, and her classic rock playlist has Queen and Weezer in the same breath, because they're just old white dudes, like,
exactly.
And she's got so many songs that mean so much to her, like she was telling me the other day about how, that feeling when you hear a song and you just have to keep putting it on and on and on again and again. But she's never paid for music ever in her life. So I don't even know when it'll happen. Like, it'll be like a weird, she might, in her later teens, she might get into vinyl, and then it'll be like a weird sort of, like a bit of it'll be a strange experience for her to go, I'm going to give money to someone and they'll give me music back, So things change, and you have to find your own ways of being, like, all we really care about as far as where Dead is at is how can we keep going,
Right, sure.
And if that means that people buy our music, great. If that means that people pay to see us play a show, great. If that means we've got like the Bandcamp subscription thing happening now, and that has been the best. Yeah, it's been the best thing we've done in years. Can
you speak a little bit to that? Because that is one of the only things I actually forgot to ask you. So
yeah. Well, I just, again, I think, sometimes some things work for some people and some for others, and I know that people tend to, I remember like a housemate saying, we're just going to make our album free because Death Grips made their album free and they got huge. And I was like, yeah, but
you're not Death Grips.
They're not the same. Like, that's not necessarily why, Yeah. And so same with things like subscription or your Patreons or whatever. Like, it's going to be, it's not a one size fits all. But what we did was, when it came out that Spotify, when we sort of realized Spotify was funding AI weaponry, we went, fuck it. Like, that's enough for us. We've been on there long enough. We gave it a go. We don't really make any money out of it. It's just not important to us to be on there. Yes, we understand that by removing our music from there, we'll lose some opportunities, but honestly, at this point, that doesn't bother us. So we took our music off there, and at that point, I think we were making about $75 a year from Spotify. So then, after much deliberation, I thought, yeah, we'll give this Bandcamp subscription thing a go. But I thought a lot about how to do it, and I thought, in this day and age of like crowdfunding and stuff, there's a tendency for people to go, we really want to make an album. Oh, shit, we don't have money for it. Okay, we'll do a crowdfunding. And you end up creating all these crazy things like, hey, give us this amount of money and I'll
do a personal tap dance for you. Okay, great.
Yeah. And
we'll make you a pinata of your head, whatever. Okay.
And there's a certain person from a certain major label band back in the day that set a record in crowdfunding. We don't need to name them, but my God, she really, when I saw her crowdfunding thing, I was like, fuck, I've never been so offended in my life at some of the options. But people, if your fans want to do that, that's great. If your fans want to pay you shitloads of money to do a portrait of them, even though you're not a painter. Great. But I thought about who are our fans? Like, our fans are not those people. They're not, our fans are people that take the piss out of us when we meet them. They're not people that like hold us up as, and our fans are people that say, hey, do you need somewhere to stay? Because you can stay at my house, So basically I set it up just as about as minimal as I could. I was like, Bandcamp is an unusually good platform. Touch wood, it seems to have still genuinely
to be ruined. So
yeah.
Well, what's the best of the graveyard on that one?
And the way we set it up, or I set it up, I should say, is I just said it's $4 a month or more, and all you're doing is supporting us to do what we already do, but it'll happen quicker if there's more money. So there's not going to be any crazy like, pledge this amount and then we'll send you this, or and also because postage has been such a bitch these last few years, I thought most of our fans are in the US, and now to send them a CD costs like $24. So
if you can even do it, you can't even. I haven't checked in a while, but for a while they just were like, nope, you can't send anything to Australia anymore. I'm like, what? You just can't.
Yeah.
You can't do it? Okay. Wow.
So we just set it up as like, hey, if you give us this money, we'll keep doing what we do. And that we do stuff regularly. So we're not a band that releases an album every 2 to 3 years. We tend to release something, we release something every, maybe 6 months or, and it's been really, really good. And we make about twice as much a month from it as we would from Spotify. And it's growing, and it genuinely helps us. It's like, and actually now I can afford to pay the mastering engineer for the album.
Which is nice.
Great. Like, so now these people that gave us money will get the record earlier. And look, we do I have released a few things on the sly where I've gone, this is a Club Dead only release, like something that I've recorded in the rehearsal room or whatever. But I keep that fairly minimal because the whole idea is, if you're signing up because you want, in the same way that I'm a patron of your show, I just go, I want to hear this stuff. So this to me seems like a pretty good deal. Like, you've given me a really easy way to give you a really small amount of money.
Yeah.
And I'll get to hear all this shit from all these cool people. Like, that's just, I think just what, there's a lot to undo in the music industry, because for so long it just ran rife as far as the musicians themselves just being just so brutally exploited, that now it's very hard to claw that back and say to people, hey, you know what, like, that shit actually costs money. Like, whether you paid for it or not, it does cost money. So do you want to, do you want to be a part of that? Or because I
everyone's brains to like to think.
Yeah, because I don't want to only listen to, Paul McCartney and stuff for the rest of my life, and I love Paul McCartney, but I don't want to only listen to people that already established themselves, in the sort of heyday. I want to hear, the new record from Throat, and I want to hear, that. I want to hear that stuff. So yeah, it's worked out really well for us. And someone asked me the other day, I was at some sort of industry thing, and they were a bit suspicious of it, and they said, oh yeah, well, that sounds really good, but how many people have you lost? And I said, well, they said, what happens when you lose people? And I said, well, you haven't. So
I'll let you know if it happens.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been really good. And if that's something that anyone listening, can use as a tool to keep doing what they do, I definitely encourage it. But like all things, like I mean, going back to the crusty metaphor, I mean, what you do with this show is it's so much represents actually what Dead has always been about too, which is like, yeah, let's be DIY, but not shitty about it. Like, let's strive to do things as well as we can, So to me, that's when DIY is at its best. Like, hey, this is a real, genuine show. This is a professional show. This is like the DIY version of that, like Letterman or whatever, like that thing that you knew was all like you could rely on, like every Saturday night or whatever those shows were on, like that's going to happen. And I'm going to, rather than just, let's just photocopy all our covers and do the bare minimum because whatever, it's punk. I don't like that. I actually really like, everyone doing. I love it when people do the best that they can, and so this is a way that if it works for you, but you've got to put the work in. Like all things, the same way that if you stopped making this show, I would stop giving you that $1 a month or whatever it is. I give it to you for a while, and then I go, hey, you know what? No, this isn't the deal. Yeah, so it's the same with us. If we stopped giving the Club Dead people music, then I wouldn't expect them to stick around. Yeah.
Well, and there's that trust, right? And that's what it comes down to. And also, to speak to your point, DIY doesn't necessarily mean it has to look like crap or like, be of lesser value. It just
absolutely, yeah.
And I fully reject anybody that would claim that be the case or would say that, like, however, whatever terms they coach it in. I think that's people limit themselves all the time. And again, that goes back to my earlier rant about it being, it's look, a lot of our societal elements are there so people can be sold to. And it's just the way it is. It's something to endure more than anything else. If you're aware of it, I think it's easier to contend with, but just realize that, like, you don't have to accept it. Right? And that's something that, look, I say a lot of stuff, and a lot of people I talk to say a lot of stuff too. But if people can come away with any like kind of guiding principle is just give it a go. Right? I mean, like, well, the worst could happen, it fails. Great. Well, at least you tried. What's the butthole surfer saying? It's better to better regret something you have done than something you haven't.
Yeah. And then the bloody Red Hot Chili Peppers put that in a song. I was like,
you fucking.
I mean, they referenced the butthole surfers. I was like, no, that's not fair. You
don't get to do that. Yeah.
They're our band. They're for the weirdos. They're not yeah. But I was like, yeah, and it's never been a better time to do that stuff anyway. Like, that's the other good, again, the positive. If you think of, I mean, that's a weird example. It's so strange, that I grew up in a time when the Butthole Surfers were on the Romeo and Juliet soundtrack. Like,
right.
That is,
who approved that?
Yeah, but that is weird. But also, who knows how many other bands like them, never sort of saw the light of day. Whereas now, if you are a band, not that very few bands are as fucked up as they were, but if you do happen to be in a band that's as weird as them, you're not going to get funded to record an album the way they did, but you can, you can put it out there in a way that they would never have dreamed of at the time, and probably that's what they exactly would have done. Imagine if in the 80s you said to the Butthole Surfers, you know what you can do? You can actually just put this shit on a space where the whole world can get it. I imagine they would have gone, fuck yeah.
Let's do that. Yeah. Where's the catch?
Yeah. So it is, that's the positive. It's a good time for that. And and we can engage in this media, and you don't have to watch Netflix or whatever the fuck. No, I mean, there's some good stuff on there, I know, but yeah.
I mean, it's fine. It's whatever. But the thing that people need to remember is, like, the latest Netflix show, like the last season of Stranger Things will still be there if you want to watch it, right? Whereas, like, independent media and things like that, the support matters more. And I don't know, like, it's hard to reprogram people to think that way, because we're just trained not to think that way, because everyone is being pushed to being soft, compliant consumers of, receiving the media that is being put through. But like, it's possible for anyone to change that. They just have to know it exists first. So
yeah, that's the biggest challenge. But it's great too. I think this show, I kept talking about your show, but this show that you're doing, like, pre this technology that we have now, like, even when I first started touring in the early 2000s and stuff, it would have been a zine that
yes, it was.
that I would have discovered in someone's bathroom, like, whilst on tour. And gone, oh, this is cool. This guy's done an interview with, Flipper and with, what the fuck, the guy from Devo shit. Cool. Oh, that's great. Where do you get this? Oh, you can't.
I don't know. I just got it from a guy who had it.
Oh, this sucks though. I really I would like to have some of these to give to my friends. Well, you can't. Sorry. Like, I got it off a guy. I got it off a guy in the US, and who knows how many they printed, and that's it. So I would just go about my way thinking, oh, that Protonic Reversal zine is pretty cool. Like, shame I'll never get to read it again. Whereas now, you can engage straight away. The other thing, like, just to go back to the Club Dead thing, what I love about it is, for me, this eternal frustration, this constant frustration in the now times has been, we have never had an easier way to directly give money to artists for what they do. The fidelity of music has never been higher. If you like listening to vinyl, that's great, and I love vinyl too. But for bands at our level, it's pretty insane that we keep having to release it rather than just say, hey, here are the higher resolution files, higher resolution than the vinyl. And all you have to do is just give us a little bit of money and we'll give it to you. So for the last, like, 5 years.
But that doesn't enrich the middlemen, though. That's the thing.
No, exactly, yeah.
And then maybe be more popular.
But I spend all my money now on music. I spend it all on digital, basically. Just because so many bands I love are maybe in Europe or the US, and it's just it's like, it's not practical to. It's everyone loses.
Impossible for a while. I haven't checked in a month or two, but yeah, it's like.
Yeah, so I love it that I can just go. There is a new. I just bought the new Hammerhead. I was like, fuck. I didn't even know that they would. Never realized they were going to release something, and paid $10 or something, and now I've got a new Hammerhead record. Like, what an amazing time. Like, it is. That would have been a $40 import CD when I was a kid. Like, that would have been more than, that would have been like 2 days' wages as a kid to listen to that. So anyway, we can talk about how things have changed.
Things are better than they used to be. That's true. Yeah. Jem, this has been awesome, man. It's great to have you back. It's I was hoping by the next time that you were on that you had been over here and played some shows since then, but that'll have to be for the future. So that's good. And I love the ethic and I love the output. So and anything.
Likewise.
Anything else that I think we covered a lot. Anything else that you wanted to cover while we were talking?
Well, I did want to I just wanted you to note that I deliberately placed my noise rig here because I
appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really I'm so stoked that I've both managed to. I don't want to advertise a brand that I'm not sponsored by, but except for them, of course, because they're cool. And I feel I love that sticker. And I deliberately placed it like, I hope that's noticed.
Here we go. It's a little out of frame, of course.
It is.
It's
those in the know. Yeah.
Those in the know that is indeed what I call needs yelling. Yes.
Which is I thought that come up with the best sort of catchphrase, but then there's another one. What was the one that came out of Caterwall?
Loud,
terrible,
terrible music. Yes.
Yeah.
which we have stickers of those coming as well, which is astounding. Yeah, that's.
But yeah, as far as what else to say, just look, we're going to keep doing what we do, and this new album will be out soon, and we deliberately wanted you, Conan, to hear it and not everyone else, just because I thought that would be cool to be able to tell people, hey, in this day and age where usually everything's just, so it'll come out soon, and to everyone that has been supporting what we do, we really, really appreciate it. I hope that's clear, because I know sometimes we're too busy being immature, but we really, really appreciate the heck out of it. So new album soon, and hopefully we will be back in the States whenever it's like feasible. Yeah, it's not quite there yet. Yeah.
Well, I hope Christian and the boys can get out there, and you can rock with them, and rock again.
Yes, I've got my fingers crossed for those guys.
Fingers crossed, those. Yeah.
I'm anxious just for them. I'm just like, oh fuck. Because I know they're doing so much touring too. It's like, yeah.
They are indeed. Jem, sir, thanks so much, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, love it.
Until next time, I know you won't, but don't be a stranger.
I will not.
Take care, brother.
Cheers, you too. See ya.
There he goes. Oh, the amazing Jem from Dead. Let's hear a tune. We'll play out something from. We'll do something from Raving Drooling, because that's what came out last time, and it's what I have on my screen. All right. Was a little bit of remorse off of Raving Drooling. Second pressing for that is happening. Did we talk about that? We talked about a lot of stuff. I don't know, but that was Jem. Jem from Dead, man. What a cool dude and cool band. So yeah, hope y'all enjoyed that. Can't wait for them to get out to the U.S., man. Like it's people throw around the term lifers a lot, but those are some awesome lifers as far as I'm concerned. Hey, thanks so much for listening. The name of the show is Coda Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Thank you very much for listening to it. This show airs Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific on Radio Nope, radionope.com. Say yes to Nope. Also on Twitch, YouTube, sometimes on the Facebook page when I feel like it. If you like the show, all the archives are free, protonicreversal.com. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding. However, if you like the show and want to get episodes sooner, $1 a month at patreon.com/protonicreversal will achieve that very achievable goal, and your help is appreciated. Thanks to everyone for sharing the show around. That helps people find it. Liking, subscribing, all that stuff. The YouTube page is tantalizingly close to 1,000. It's like, I think it's 8 away now. It's like watching paint peel. But, you know, hey, thanks for paying attention at all. Whatever format you choose to experience this show. A lot of stuff coming up. There's some Coda Neutron, The Secret Friends shows coming up with Service, Nashville, Louisville, Indianapolis, Atlanta, not in that order. NeutronFriends.bandcamp.com. I'm going to start mentioning tour dates now. So there you go. But lots of good stuff coming to Protonic too. Mike Kunka, got it, Silo, next week. Stay safe out there. And take it easy.
Got my radio on. Can you hear me now? 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 See the radio. And that snare drum and that drum roll means we've got a winner. If you're the fifth caller, or any caller at all, welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? This is a test! If this had been a real emergency,